good evening, good morning, depending where you are. I'm very happy to have you here in this webinar. Today we will talk about linked data for the environmental sector, use cases and opportunities. Yeah, since you are logged in now into GoToWebinar, some probably will still try to get in. Just wanted to point out there is the option to use the chat and the question and answering module. So if you have any questions, please put them into the system and we will try to give answers on that later. And also sometimes it's good to stay for a while after we finished our talk, and then we can switch on the microphone. So if we want to talk in person, just stay for a couple of minutes and we would be happy to talk to you. Okay, so my name is Andreas Blumauer. I'm from Semantic Web Company, and together with my colleague Martin Kaltenböck, also from SWC, and with Florian Bauer from REAP, we will give you a quick overview over what's going on in the linked data community for the environmental sector in those days. So we will show you 3 use cases and we will discuss a little bit, okay, what are the opportunities for the environmental sector? So those are the speakers of today. I will start with a short introduction to linked data in general. Then my colleague Martin will start with a first use case, going over to a second use case I will present, and Florian from REAP will present his use case. Okay, so a couple of words about the Semantic Web Company. We are founded in 2001, so we are pretty long already on the market. We're here in Austria and Vienna. And we are a small team of experts in the area of building strategies and consultancy services and coding, programming around linked data, open data. And we also have a product on the market since 2009 called Pool Party, which is good to do linked data, obviously. Besides NGOs worldwide, we also serve Global 500 companies from different branches like pharma industry, finance industry, and media publishing industry, most of all. We've got partners all over the places, so we would be happy to hear from you if you're interested in our products. So a couple of customers here. What they all have together in common is they deal with a lot of information and they want to make it better accessible. And therefore, they either use the World Wide Web to make data accessible for other parties, to integrate data into third-party applications, or our customers are also interested in semantic technologies and linked data technologies for internal purposes. Think of a large company like Daimler. They are more or less kind of a World Wide Web internally. And here the same question occurs, okay, all the departments generate a lot of information, how to make it better accessible to others, how to link information across the boundaries. Yeah, and that's exactly what REAP is doing in the clean energy sector. And we will listen to Florian's use case in about 30 minutes or so, when he's talking about regal.info, which is one of the leading open data clean energy information portals. It attracts a lot of users per month. It's linked, or actually it's information, but also the organization behind it, behind Regal, REAP, is linked to a lot of other stakeholders, other organizations, and we will see how linked data and communication and networking belongs together in this use case. Okay, so I will start now with the first round. I will talk about data management in the environmental sector. What's the current situation? Of course, it's a very large sector. I mean, if you talk about the environmental sector, that's so many different sub-communities, so many different stakeholders. And yeah, and that's exactly the problem actually we address, we try to address here. all of those players on the so-called environmental sector have a lot of common interests in common, of course. I mean, if you think about the renewable energy sector on the one hand and water management on the other, there are many, would say, overlaps. There are a lot of common topics. And the question really is, okay, how can we at least leverage the existing data to make the view on all this information a bit more holistic, to overcome the boundaries which exist between all those different communities. And boundaries are in place also because different languages are spoken, not only that there are different goals and targets are followed. No, it's also the language. And that's one point we address here with linked data, with linked vocabularies. And the other one you will see is very much about the data itself. And those are the two layers actually of linked data in this sense. So let me clarify what I mean by that. So first of all, common understanding, I think, is the basis that a better collaboration could happen. So if people from renewable energy sector talk about wastewater treatment, they see it in a different context. They see it linked to other topics than people from water management would do. Of course, they're more specific in that sector. Water management people would mean by saying wastewater treatment, obviously something else. They probably wouldn't not even use that word so frequently because they see it as they have more specific terms for that. So they rather would talk about the details here instead of using that term for a very general approach. And another problem with the language spoken is, of course, the localization we've got. So if we think about, let's say, certification, it's something different, or rating is something different. And of course, there are also overlaps between those two words on a conceptual level, but it's not exactly the same. Is there a concept people from the US and Europe share? Is there a word in common? Is there a concept in common? So you see, it's not that easy if we think about, okay, how could we collaborate? How could we link knowledge bases from one community to the other, from one region to the other? So that's the question. How could we do that? Especially the environmental sector is seeking for solutions to have, let's say, a knowledge base in common, to be able to search over existing knowledge from others by using their own words, by exploring the spaces, although you probably don't even know the right words. And that's exactly where we can give a solution, strategies to our customers by using vocabularies, controlled vocabularies, and linked data technologies. So it's kind of a semantic puzzle, actually, we try to solve here. There's so many data sources out there, but each of those data providers look at this elephant here in the middle through its own classes, more or less. So it's all it's a different perspectives on the same thing. But how can we manage to generate a holistic view on that? That's the question here. So as an example, for instance, in the buildings performance sector, Ingeborg Nolte said, in 2012, we saw the launch of an impressive number of online portals sharing data and analysis on energy efficiency in buildings. So there's a lot of data around, but how are they linked together? So the question really is, will Excel be the ultimate solution? Are we going to each data source provider, collect the data, and link it on top of Excel? To me, it looks a little bit like that. That's the picture I have in mind when I read that. So all of us are trying to collect a little bit of data out of these huge data silos, and then we put it into our Excel sheet and try to find a solution for our, excuse me saying that, for our little problems. And that can't be the solution. So we really need something on top of these data silos. We need to have an infrastructure which makes out of these data silos an integrated knowledge base. That's what I'm saying here. So I'm talking here about data analytics 2.0. It's the islands are now open for the experts, but that doesn't scale up. That's the problem. Okay, so now before Martin will present the first use case on top of linked data, I will explain a little bit more what we mean by saying linked data and what, in contrast to linked data, is linked open data. So that's the data analytics 3.0, or at least the infrastructure for it. So here are the islands connected. You can see here are different data silos, more or less. They are open to be linked to others. There are a couple of preconditions have to be done to being linked with others. And now anybody can go and not only fetch data from each data silo in a single step, but you can treat those data silos as they were connected. So you don't have to swim around and go and get some data. You can treat that, what you see in front of you, from a, let's say, a bird's eye perspective. And that's the point, because we are using standards. And that's very important in that case. So this kind of standard, what you can see here in the middle, this, let's say, white integrator, makes it possible that you can play around with different data sources as they were one single database. And that's the interesting thing here. So this large giant knowledge base, also called the Linked Open Data Cloud, looks a little bit like that. I mean, of course, it's more structured in all its bubbles. But the big thing here is all those data sources, as I said, have the same standards in use. And that makes it attractive to data integrators, because if you want to give answers to really complex questions like the one I've put down here, you usually have to walk around, seek for little information pieces and put them together with a tool like Excel, as I said before. Now you won't have to do that anymore. You just need to know, okay, where all this data is, and then you can go ahead and make a mashup out of it. And of course, I'm not saying it's perfect yet, because there are a couple of problems still in place with the Linked Open Data Cloud, but we are on a good way. So one of the problems I want to point out here is it's about licensing. Just recently, it became again clear that a lot of data sources haven't got a license model yet on top of it. So a lot of them don't have a license at all. And that makes it impossible to being used, especially by commercial projects, by companies, by enterprises. And we desperately seek at the moment, to be honest, for the uptake in commercial communities. Linked open data is a great thing for organizations who don't have to take care so much about the licensing. So that's the point, but I think that can be resolved. There are a lot of things going on at the moment also in the licensing sector. Okay, the current situation here, I think it was really well pointed out by Florian. I think we will talk about that later also. It's necessary to split the responsibilities for different data sets between different data providers. And that's the whole idea about linked data, because splitting means also coordination. It means to trigger a positive network effect between the stakeholders, between the experts. And I really believe that big data is not the single solution for that. It's not the ultimate solution, because if you look at this cloud, you see there are stakeholders. They have several domains, subdomains they can focus on. Each of those know a little bit more about this or that. And if you link this expert data to each other, then you get really high quality out of it. And to say that, I strongly believe that we need a trusted LOD cloud. So we need to know who is the data provider, and everybody's responsible for each other, that the quality of data is good enough. And that's also something we have to take care here. Okay, so now I will hand over to Martin. We'll make him presenter, and he will present now the first use case.
Hi, Andreas. Thank you very much. This is Martin speaking for the great introduction about linked open data in the environmental sector. So I just have to jump to the right screen here. Just a moment. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Martin Kaltenberg from the Semantic Web Company. And hopefully now you see the first use case. And I'm happy this afternoon in the next 15 minutes to be invited to show and tell you a little bit about the use case of GBPN. So GBPN stands for Global Buildings Performance Network, and it's an NGO that is located in France, in Paris. The global center is located there, and from there they work together worldwide with several regional hubs. One, as you see here on the map, in the United States, that is IMT. Then they work together with Europe, with the BPIE, the Buildings Performance Institute Europe. And they also work a lot and more in the areas of India and China. And you also see here on the screen what is the mission. So the mission is of GBPN to advance best practice policies that can significantly reduce energy consumption and associated carbon emission, and in the area of buildings. So that's just for an introduction, a short one, what GBPN is. And GBPN launched a knowledge platform, gbpn.org. They launched this, it's a very new one, in the end of February this year. And the idea and the objectives of these knowledge platforms were to share knowledge, because one of the vision, or part of the vision of GBPN, is to share knowledge worldwide about energy performance building data, or data in the area of energy performance in buildings. Also to build awareness and showcase best practices in this area, for example, in the area of building codes. So a very important thing in the area of building performance are building codes worldwide, and they're very, very different. Then to stimulate collective research, bringing people together, to stimulate collective analysis from experts worldwide, and thereby then, as a next step, promote better decision making. And putting this all together to help the building sector efficiently or effectively reduce its impact on climate change. And the nice thing is that this platform is implemented now, and linked open data, also as you pointed out before, with all its benefits and potential, as you said, Andreas, can successfully service all of these objectives. So just one short or a few words about the technical solution of the GBPN knowledge platform. So I will start beginning at the bottom of the screen. As you see here, this guy with a green shirt. What we have done here is we have built several controlled vocabularies, and these controlled vocabularies are open and they're linked. So you see they're published in the linked open data cloud that has been explained before, and they're also enriched by this linked open data cloud with several other resources, for example, also with the Regal Thesaurus, with a Regal vocabulary that also Florian will speak a little bit about later. And for example, now the Buildings Performance Thesaurus has about 450 concepts, and it's open. It's open license as all of the data GBPN. We have chosen and selected a CC BY, so a Creative Commons Attribution license. All this data is available, so everybody can reuse the data and work with it. Just give the attribution of GBPN when using it. And we were building, or we are using also, for example, a thesaurus of regional, of geographical information with 4,500 concepts in it. And then we have built some classification thesauri that are used inside of the GBPN system to classify information. And the nice thing is then you see this nice arrow going into the main system. So the main system of gbpn.org is built using Drupal open source content management system that is serving about 7 million websites worldwide at the moment and is very powerful. So Drupal builds the container of the whole knowledge platform, as it's a web-based platform, saying we're using it for the user management, for the whole content management, for data acquisition and maintenance. For all these things is the Drupal system used. And now we have imported and we have integrated this cost thesauri, this linked open vocabularies, into the Drupal system. using it for annotation and for mappings of the content. And then there's a lot of content that is not GBPN content. So you see all these little arrows coming in from the top. So we are, for example, harvesting a lot of data sources. I will showcase a little bit later what we're doing with all this data. And we are taking RDF data, for example, also from the LOD Cloud. And what is happening at the moment is that we are more and more integrating also data from the regional hubs. So what you see here on top is tiny little screenshots. For example, the one is buildingsdata.eu of BPIE. There's really a comprehensive collection of buildings data from EU 27 countries. And this here is buildingrating.org, that is the US hub of GBPN, that is collecting more policy comparison data, let's say it like this, in the building sector, so building rating data. And we're fetching in this data, and we're mixing it up, and we're using the pool party extractor, as we're using the pool party thesaurus manager. We're using the extractor to annotate the information, to extract it, not to get too deep into technical issues. It's a text mining component where we then put in context the information of GBPN and the information, the third-party information, to bring together the knowledge platform of GBPN with integrated views, and more also semantic search will be in place when more and more information from the regional hubs will be integrated. So just an overview, and you see the output, the user view is here, the GBPN.org knowledge platform. Going away from the architecture or from this technical solution, I would like to go directly into some live demos. So here are some examples what the GBPN.org platform is providing to the user, to the interested audience. I will showcase 3 of them. The first one is a linked open data-based GBPN terminology. We could also say it's a smart glossary, you will see in a minute. Then I will show you the GBPN news aggregator tool that is aggregating about 30 news sources of building performance worldwide, putting this together and then putting it in context and then make it filterable so that you can find out what you're really interested in. And then the third area of the demo will be the GBPN policy comparative tool that compares building codes worldwide and scored building codes to show the best practice approaches in the areas of the building codes and to compare them. There's a lot of more information, a lot of more tools on the GBPN knowledge platform. For example, there's a comprehensive report database, there's a laboratory or a weblog and so on, but this is something you can explore via the web, just going to gbpn.org. So jumping out of my screen, and hopefully I will find the browser. What you see now is the start page of gbpn.org in my Firefox. And yeah, you see there's a lot of information already on the start page. Yeah, a lot of Twitter and social media and news and all these things that are needed for a medium. But we would like to go directly into the area, what is the main area of gbpn.org. So you see here the policy comparative tool and the glossary, and I will go first, as pointed out before, into the smart glossary, into the terminology. As said before, we have modeled, or GBPN has modeled about 450 concepts so far. So what you see here is the entry point of the thesaurus, and you have the chance to access all the information by different ways. So for example, here we call it a relation browser. Gives you an overview. You can learn more about the topics of buildings performance. So I go into this area and say, okay, general building performance is then split into areas like building design, assessment systems, and so on and so forth. And what is a very important issue, as I know these days, is low energy buildings. So I go into this area and can go deeper and navigate through all these, through this glossary. So it's a smart glossary. It's something like a graph, a network, where you can go through. And then if you have found something like the zero energy buildings, so I'm interested in this topic, then I get here all the information around this this concept of zero energy buildings. So I get synonyms here. I got a description that is coming here from an external source. That's coming from Jens Lausten, and then it you see how it's placed there in the glossary, in this graph, and then you see there are broader terms available, narrower terms. What is also very nice is here you get, for example, then the RDF data that can be used by machines for further reuse. And then you can navigate and go through the areas. But you can also say, okay, I'm interested in accessing this information directly just by browsing it. So that would be the same way here. And what is also interesting and very helpful is just to go into a search and you get autocomplete of this terminology about this vocabulary. And here we are again in the zero energy buildings domain. So that is one very nice basis of the whole system. So at the one hand, we have it here as this smart glossary, and on the other hand, we have used this vocabulary to annotate, semantically annotate the content of gbpn.org, as well as then to integrate data from one to another. So I jump to the second area I mentioned before. So you see I was clicking into the policy comparative tool. And what is very nice here, what you see here, these objects on the screen are building codes. And these are building codes collected worldwide from some areas where GBPN is working in and interested in. So from Europe, from China, also from, I think, some areas in the United States. And what has been done here is GBPN has scored all these building codes. So what you see here on top is a scoring system that has 5 major areas like holistic approach, dynamic process, and so on. And then you see these parameters that were used to score all the building codes. And you can have access here how it has been scored. And then you see a basic, a default setting here at the moment using all of these parameters. And then if you go on one of these objects, this is, for example, the building code of Austria, then you see how Austria has been scored about all these parameters, these indicators. And yeah, for sure you can say, okay, let's deselect everything because I'm only interested, for example, in the holistic approach. Then I click these 2 areas and you see that the respective scoring data is filled on the one hand, and that all these tiny little objects, the building codes, go up. And I'm interested, what is the best building code at the moment here for this holistic approach? And I see, oh, very interesting. It's, I think I have a problem here. This should be France, exactly. It's France, because France has the highest score. And maybe we go for another area and say we would like to add the dynamic process. And then we see, okay, Denmark is on top. And what's very nice also, if you have compared these building codes, for example, and just to let you know, all these parameters, these scoring indicators, as well as the building codes and the regions are also behind, has been set up using linked open data principles. So we have a URI per building code, a URI, for example, also per indicator, and so on and so forth. So we can easily do some data integration and mapping in the future with all of this data. So what is a nice feature is if you have found out the comparison and you would like to send it, then you can also click here and share, for example. And hopefully that works now on my screen. Here it is. Here it comes. Then I have a little picture that you can send around or you can use for presentations, but that's only a tiny feature. And what is very interesting is that you say, okay, Denmark has a good building code in these areas, but I'm interested in more details in this building codes. So then I click on the building codes itself, and you see the system jumps into the detail info. And what we have here now is a very comprehensive information about the building code of Denmark. So with all the detailed information, like the general information with the remit of code and the coverage and so on and so forth. And you can explore this information on the one hand, you can export it, you can print it, you can make a PDF out of it to send it around or reuse it to take it with you. And this can be done for all the areas, for all the building codes that are covered by the, let's say, priority areas that GBPN is working in that I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation. And for every building code you see the scoring and you see what this scoring is all about, and you can explore these building codes and you can find out that, I don't know, Denmark has a very good building code because of performance approaches, and maybe an opposite to your country, to the building code in your country what can be optimized and what they have been doing differently. So building awareness, building best practice, and using it for better decision making. For example, changing a building code in the next step. This is the idea of this system or of this tool. Okay, I go back to the interactive tool I've been before. But what I would like to show you is there is also in the building codes, there's a lot of data behind, so real data, structured data. And what is here, we call it, it's a tool called Generate Graphs, is you can make a hard fact comparison of the building codes. And also here, all of these factors that you see are URI based in the back, so we can use it for further issues and solutions and services in the future. So what I'm doing here is building element and value graph. So I go for this area and say I'm interested, let's say Denmark again, I had before, and I think it was France, and some building elements that I'm interested in for the building codes to find out the comparison. Now, let's take 2 of them or 3 of them, would be windows, walls, and floors. And what you see here is a very interesting one. So I think we don't have data for France in the system. That's a little bit of a pity. So I will go back to Austria and try again. That's the demo effect. Yeah, now we got data. So you see there's a comparison now between the areas of windows, walls, and floors, the U values in these building codes that are part of the building codes in Austria and in Denmark. You can switch over these areas and you can say, I'm not interested in windows anymore. So you have an interactive chart library that can be used to compare this data. And you can, at any time, you can change your things and say, okay, I'm very interested in overall performance values of the building code. So I go into this area, and now you get a plotted dot chart, I think, or something like this. And the nice thing here is, again, here you can really export the data as CSV. So if you click on this, you can select then if it's comma separated or semicolon separated, following the way that your Excel, for example, for some usage, not following the way that Andreas was pointing out before, that we all have to export it into our Excels, but it's possible. So it's open data in principle and can be used, and it's all, again, Creative Commons attribution license. So that was the second area I would like to show you. And last but not least, there's a comprehensive newsroom on the GBPN knowledge platform that you see. There's news and there's a newsletter for sure, so media and social media tools are in place, but I would like to show you this nice news aggregator. So what we have been doing here is we are harvesting news from, at the moment, 30 sources, and we're using the GBPN Thesaurus and also the Geographical Thesaurus that I've mentioned at the beginning to annotate, semantically annotate it, and to put the things in context, and to make it filterable, so that, for example, if you are only interested in building energy in use, but let's say you're interested in this topic in the area of Americas, then you can filter it. And then you can go down to 355 results, and you say, okay, that's very interesting. Maybe I'm also interested in the area of finance, because that's the topic I'm working in. And you see it drills down the results, so it's something like faceted search here on the right-hand side. And I'm only interested in things that were published last week. So I can do this. And at the end, I got exactly one result that could be very interesting for me that I was looking for. So in the masses of information that is arising these days, also in the area of buildings performance or in the environmental sector, such a tool can help, and that is what is the idea of the tool, to more or less find the needle in the haystack. And if you're interested to reuse your filters in the future, then you got an RSS button here, where you can then take your RSS feed on these filters, and every day up to date, you can fetch the information into your RSS reader. So at the end of the GBPN use case I wanted to showcase you today is only a small thing that we also implemented. What's a nice area is we used this thesaurus to explain people what the topics are about. So you see here a small glossary widget on the right-hand side, and every article that is annotated, what can be done manually but also automatically, this annotation, gives then on the right-hand side a small glossary icon from the glossary, the terminology we have seen before, that explains the interested user, for example, my example from the beginning, what a net zero energy building is. So you can learn more about this and explore the data following the vision of GBPN, of knowledge sharing and exchange of information and data. So I think that was everything from my side so far on the GBPN use case. So I will try to hand over the screen again to you, Andreas.
Thanks,
and
Martin.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Martin. We've got a question in the meantime, so wanted to remind all of you, just put a question you've got into the question section of the dashboard of GoToMeeting program. Martin, there is one question about what is the business model of GBPN? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Good question that we have to invite somebody from. The business model of GBPN itself or of the knowledge platform would be a little bit a question back. So GBPN is an NGO, so a non-governmental institution that serves its own visions, and the visions are to reduce carbon emission in the sector of buildings. So as far as I know, they're also doing a zero energy building project or intervention together with REAP. Maybe Florian can tell us a little bit about this. So there is no big business model as it's an NGO, NPO. Not sure how to tell you more about this, to be honest. So they are serving their visions as being an NGO and trying to make best practice and to support policymakers, project developers, just to reduce the carbon emission and to have better building codes, for example, worldwide.
Well, I think that's a good business model, isn't it? I mean, of course, it's not about profit, but that's something we quite frequently see in the environmental sector, that organizations are not only, after profit. So, and of course, it's something which fits very well with the idea of open data somehow. But we can discuss that also after use case number 3. Would be happy if you state. Thanks, Nicholas, for the question. And now I will go over to use case number 2. It's compared to the others, a very brief use case I will showcase here. It's about the Geographical Survey of Austria, GBA. Has got actually three challenges here tackled with the linked data approach. First of all, it's about the compliance with the INSPIRE directive. INSPIRE is, a European directive about data in the geo sector. And I'll show you how linked open data helped GBA to tackle that issue. A second challenge was to build a kind of a internal knowledge management infrastructure. So as most surveys, geographical surveys have, of course, GBA also produces a lot of content, a lot of reports and papers. They've got a library. They have to collect data from the external sources. So the idea was, okay, how could we build a semantic layer, an integrated view on top of that? So that's what was the second challenge they tackle. And the third one, I think that's again what I've pointed out in the first round, is something about having something in place like a coordination mechanism. I mean, we're now in the year 2013. Okay, the internet compared to what we've seen before as humankind is very new to us, but we found out that obviously the internet is a very good coordination tool for many, many purposes. Just think about about the social media, which recently happened when certain countries tried to get rid of some politicians. So I think the coordination mechanisms can also be realized on top of data. And all these geological surveys, of course, they traditionally meet from time to time at conferences and talk to each other. So what have you done in your country? What have we done? And blah, blah, blah. But all the data is not really connected to each other. And that's a bit a strange thing, actually. I mean, geography doesn't end up at the border of a country. It's or geological information the same. It doesn't stop at the border. So what GBA has done, they've built up a thesaurus, which of course covers a lot of general concepts in the geological realm. But as you can imagine, in Austria, we've got very special stuff. I mean, we've got the Alps, we've got certain special things. Probably people in, let's say, in South America wouldn't have, or in other countries. So what this thesaurus has to cover is this layer of semantics of geographical knowledge, which is, let's say, general all over the places. And that part can be nicely linked to GeoSciML. So GeoSciML is kind of a hub in that community, which can serve as a reference point for all the specific, smaller but more specific knowledge graphs. So this GBA Thesaurus is the, let's say, the Austrian version of how to interpret geographical knowledge, and it's linked with the world GeoSciML, which is worldwide somehow valid. And as a second way to link, it can be potentially linked, let's say, to the knowledge graph of the Czech Republic. We share with the Czech Republic, for instance, certain parts, certain mountains, certain regions. So of course we have a lot of things in common. So that could be linked with the geographical thesaurus of the Czech Republic, but unfortunately there isn't any thesaurus yet it could be linked with. The British government has spent a lot of money and in that area, in the area of linked open data, also in the geographical area. So that's another hub which could serve as a potential partner in that area. But as I've said, it seems like GeoSciML now, and it's available now as linked open data as well, could serve as such a hub, and all the, let's say, the smaller country-specific ones can link to each other, and also put a reference point to the worldwide. Also, Wikipedia and DBpedia, of course, is something which can be used as a hub here. So what we've got now is this thesaurus in place, and I will show that live now. So that's the start or the homepage of it. So it's the linked open data server of the Geographical Survey of Austria. So first of all, what you can do now is you could search for a certain word, like, let's start in English. Let's search for maple, for instance. And, oh, sorry, I have to go to English first. So we get 5 results back. So I can click on maple, for instance. I get the basic information. Once again, I would have the visual browser Martin already showed, in that case for geological knowledge. So here everything has got a URI as we are used to it in linked open data world. There's a description, there is a picture. It's retrieved from another linked open data source sometimes. So it's all linked nicely with Freebase, with DBpedia, and with GeoSciML. We've got the broader and the narrower concepts and further information: who was the author, what are the sources, the picture, and things like that. And later on, you can see also the link data information. So you see all the links, like to Freebase or to DBpedia or to GeoSciML. And let's do the same search in German now. So maple in German is Marmor. So here you also get a autocomplete. And once again, we get the same thing in German. Could go back here. And if I haven't chosen Thesaurus yet, but I search in general over the whole knowledge graph, I get the subsections where you can find Marmor. So in that case, you can even go and get the information on GeoSciML. So I click on that. Let's see, okay, here in that context, there is a link to GeoSciML or to Freebase and so on. Now I can click here and I get the corresponding instance at GeoSciML. Okay, so that's I think a nice use case which showcases the power of linked data. The Thesaurus now is used also internally for annotation processes. It's good to fulfill the Inspire directive and to further link potentially with other hubs, with the worldwide community and with the, let's say, neighbors. You could better coordinate several processes on top of that. So it's kind of an infrastructure thing. I would say linked data is very much like an information highway. We build now certain routes and others will follow. And after a while, we've got a network of information in place where we can build nice applications on top of it. Okay, so now I will hand over to Florian, who will present use case number 3. So I will change the presenter now. And hello, Florian.
Hello, good afternoon. Andreas changes to my computer. I'm Florian Bauer. I'm the operations director from REAP, the Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Partnership. And I think I'll make a step back here and be less technical and more asking a basic question, which is, why did we choose to work with linked open data and why we think this is useful? Well, that's not me, but this is a picture of a guy that looks like I feel sometimes when I open my email client. Because very often I read things like, we launched a new website, a new portal was launched, a new one-stop shop was launched. Sometimes we call them knowledge portals. And I'm pretty sure you can imagine that there are several other buzzwords that we can call new things that were launched on a website, on the web. So we like to call it the portal proliferation syndrome. And I really like that because it sounds like a bad illness, and I think kind of it is, but it's very hard to cure that. But what happens if we do that? What happens if we start one website after another and creating these websites, portals, and so on? Of course, we start to create data silos, and that's not good. It's not good if we have lots and lots of websites having their information stored in kind of a silo, not connecting to others, not connecting their data, and make it hard to reuse the data. This actually is, I like it because it's a very nice visualization of the internet, which a university has done. And I found this picture, and that is kind of a visualization of the issue. These pictures they made a big error and said, you are here, this is your website, and you're this one little small dot in this big cloud, and obviously not connected to lots of others. And that's a real issue, I think. Well, the problem is, I feel like this teddy bear very often trying to stop a train, and we can't. It is simply impossible to stop that to stop that creation of new things. And that has various reasons. One of the reasons is, you all know how it is to work in projects funded by big programs or by governments or so on. Normally, you have to create some communication products, and the easiest way to do a communication product is to launch a new website and to set up a new WordPress portal and whatever. So it's really, really hard to get around that. Another reason, of course, is that each organization wants to have their own branded portal and so on. So it's really hard to stop this, and I think we can't. But we can do something to help and to make the best out of that. And open data obviously is part of this solution. Let me show you this tag cloud. This is a tag cloud from a workshop that the city of Edmond has done where they talked about open government data. And I think, and it visualizes the topics that they discussed there. And I think it's a very nice visualization of the important stuff that you have to think about when creating new websites, when creating new portals, when putting stuff on the internet. It's a lot about data, access to data, data accessibility, availability, data quality. But on the other hand side, it's also about standards. And let me first focus on the data part, on open data, data availability, data accessibility. There recently was a study by IBM, and they said every day we create 2.5 quintillion bytes of data, and that's so much that 90% of the data in the world today has been created in the last 2 years. Well, that's quite amazing, saying that 90% of the data that we have was created in the last 2 years. And you know, thinking about the future makes it's kind of shocking, I would say. Talking about this number, I always wondered what is 2.5 quintillion bytes of data. Well, that's it. It has a lot of zeros. I still couldn't imagine what this is and tried to recalculate it. And it is around 3.4 billion HD movies. That's the amount of data that we create every day. So the question now is, why is this not enough for us? We always ask for open data, for more data, for data accessibility. Why is just this vast amount of data not enough for us? Several issues with that, several reasons for that, I think. One is that we keep data in silos, and that's what I mentioned before. Lots of websites created, lots of silos created. And this is a funny visualization of just, you know, saying someone, hey, Mr. Government official, what's going on over there? And the government official says, trust me, you don't need to know. And that's actually true in lots of countries that keeps data in silos. It's not only the governments doing that, it's also organizations and lots of other data providers. Another issue of the problem is, another part of the problem is that data is still very often part of a business model. We sell data. I think this will change. I think selling of raw data is not a good business model anymore, but it still needs time. It is still part of the issue. So what we do in REAP, we wanted to find out how we can help projects in the clean energy sector by giving them more access to data, better access to data, better access to structured data. And you know, REAP is funding projects in developing countries, projects on clean energy. And once a year, we meet with our project developers to make some peer learning, peer exchange. And at one of these workshops, we asked them, but guys, we would like to know from you, how can we help you with open data? And I'll pick just one example of a project that we are running at the moment, which is a project that is dealing with low emission transportation in Jakarta. The issue is in Jakarta, you know, it's a big city in a developing country, lots of traffic, lots of use of inefficient means of transport, private cars, motorcycles, taxis. And the solution that was proposed is to implement a so-called trunk feeder transportation system. That's a bus system in a separate lane and making the public transport much more efficient. And the impact of that is that this project saves about 130 million liter petrol, 35 million liter of diesel annually by shifting passengers to the public transport system. And that, of course, results in CO2 emissions. So it's a great project. But how could this benefit from open data, and how will it benefit from open data? Well, the current situation for them is that they need to do most of the research on their own. So when they start planning this project, when they start implementing this project, they need to do a lot of research on basic data. What they need is, for example, geographic, demographic data in the city, like how is the population distributed along these lines, what kind of people are living where do they work, from where to where do we have to bring them. And this data is potentially available. It's a lot of these data sets are already there, but it's very hard to get it and to get it in the right form. And that, of course, results in them having to redo the work, them replicating things that are already there, and that's an issue. So linked open data in that context can help a lot by avoiding replication and providing access to existing data, which makes these project implementers be able to concentrate on their own expertise, and, spend much more time and money on implementing the bus systems rather than collecting data that's already there. And it also, of course, keeps the data maintenance to a minimum, because if they start doing it on their own, they will have to maintain it. Otherwise, it runs out very quickly. And as soon as you start publishing data as open data, as linked open data, this will create a lot of knowledge and innovation, because you can start connecting data from different data providers, create new innovative things. Well, there are already some very good examples of open data, open government data. Governments are launching open government data portals, also governments in developing countries, which is a very, very good progress, I think, in Kenya and Ghana and so on. International organizations start thinking about that. World Bank has a good data portal, UN, FAO, and so on. And we, for example, in REAP, we have a tool called Regal, which is a clean energy information gateway. And we use a lot of open data. I'll show you that quickly on our website. So we have, for example, one thing that's called country energy profiles. These are country profiles from all countries in the world. And what we do there is we pull together information from various different open data providers and provide a comprehensive country energy profile. This part is from DPpedia, a description of a country. Then there is lots of information on policy and regulation from a database that we provide, that REAP provides. There are key statistics from organizations like the World Bank, like the UN, which we pull directly from their servers as open data, in open data formats, and put it in our charts. And there's lots of other information from other players like DFID projects, energy resource maps from NREL, which is a US institute, and so on. So the open data approach is really, really beneficial for us because we can provide all this information and we can put it together without lots of effort. Another good example about cooperation is a cooperation between Regal, the portal that I just showed you, and OpenAI, an open energy information portal from NREL in the US. We started linking data, and one example is we have country policy reports on developing countries, which they don't have, but they wanted to have it as part of their country profiles. And now they're using our linked open data portal to directly integrate that into their website via the tools that we offer. Which makes a big, big difference, I think, because they are not replicating the information, they are not copy and pasting the information, they're just pulling it directly from our servers, which means the information on their side is always up to date. As soon as we change something, it is also reflected on their side, and it avoids replication, and they can concentrate on what they are good in. They are very good in making these resource maps and stuff like that, which we take from them and add it to our portal. So what we need is we need to publish much more data. That's the first thing. And I always like to quote, to refer to several people. I always say, publish it even if it's imperfect. What we need is we need data, and we need that possibility to start working with it. Publish it in raw and machine-readable formats, because then, if it is not already part of an analysis, part of an interpretation, then we can start doing our own analysis, our own interpretation of the data, putting together new things. An important thing that was already mentioned before was by Andreas is that we need to publish data with licenses that allow us to reuse. The more accurate the license is that we attach to the data, the better is it for others to reuse it, because you reduce the uncertainty of what you are allowed to do with it and whatnot. And I think we have to start linking data on a data set level, and that's the philosophy of linked open data, as it was explained before. That's a very, very important part, because then we avoid all the things that I mentioned before. So I think we need more organizations and data providers offering a 5-star data model, as it is explained, as it is shown in the bottom right corner. Very quickly explaining that there is a model that was introduced, kind of rating how perfect you publish data in the web. giving 1 star, like a hotel rating, a star rating system, giving 1 star for publishing it as a PDF, which is better than not having it, but it's very hard to reuse. 2nd star if you have it in a format where you can easily process it, like an Excel file. So better you have the table in an Excel file than in a PDF for reuse. 3rd star if you use non-proprietary formats like CSV instead of Excel, because then you also can read it with a Mac. And the 4th star refers to giving each data set a unique place in the internet. You know the concept of URLs, which are the place, the links to websites, web pages. The same can be done for data sets, and actually it's very, very important to do that. And the 5th star is then do this linking, start linking data sets from one to another. And I think I'll stop there because we're running out of time. It's 6 p.m. in Vienna, and I'll hand back to Andreas.
Okay, thanks a lot to Florian. I think that was very nice conclusion at the end. I think we've showcased a bit better how alive and kicking linked data is already.